President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel may have changed the dynamics of the Middle East more than anything else in a generation. Is it a recognition that what's been tried has failed and that it's time for something, however unpalatable for many, something new? Jerusalem means so much for three great religions, Islam, Judaism and Christianity. So the symbolism of Trump's decision is enormous to billions of people worldwide. What of the charge that he's simply playing to his supporters back home when perhaps he could have a long game in mind?
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
A campaign promise fulfilled, a moment where US policy broke from precedent, throwing a region already fractured by long-standing grievances into even greater uncertainty. It's been 12 days since Trump made his announcement. What now for Jerusalem, the contested city? Jerusalem sits at the heart of tensions between Palestine and Israel. In 1967, Israel took the city during the Six-Day War and annexed the east, an occupation considered illegal under international law. Trump's announcement prompted a wave of protest across the region and the rest of the world. Violent clashes erupted outside the US Embassy in Beirut. In Jakarta, thousands gathered in solidarity with Palestine. And from the international community came condemnation. France's Macron said it would be a threat to peace. Unhelpful, said a spokesperson for British Prime Minister Theresa May. While the Kremlin warned it would split the international community. Leaders across the Middle East expressed anger.
Elle compliquera encore plus le processus de paix et posera un défi supplémentaire à la stabilité de toute la région.
Taraf olan bir Amerika'nın artık İsrail-Filistin arasında arabuluculuk yapması diye bir şey söz konusu olamaz. Bu süreç artık bitmiştir.
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has declared East Jerusalem the capital of Palestine and called on the international community to follow its lead. Calls from Hamas for a new intifada have not yet turned into a sustained uprising. But anger and resentment remain heightened. With further threats of more violence in the region and damaged ties between the Palestinian authorities and the US, doubts have been cast over America's role as peace broker in the region. Will Israel and Palestine ever share a capital? Or has Donald Trump made any hope of a two-state solution impossible?
Well, joining us for this roundtable via Skype from Tel Aviv, we have Hen Matzig, a former humanitarian officer for the Israeli Defense Forces. We'll find out what Hen is up to these days. At the roundtable, we have Sharif Nashashibi, a columnist at Arab News. We have Hada Kami, a research fellow at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies, part of the University of Exeter, and Yossi Meckelberg, Professor of International Relations at Regent's University in London. Welcome to the programme. We have four guests on the programme, three of whom I know believe that the idea of a two-state solution is not viable these days. We have one who thinks it is still possible, and that's Yossi. So tell us your reasoning behind that. Whether you think it's not only possible, but is it likely?
That's a question between probability and possibility. Whether it's possible, I think it's still possible because I don't believe in historical irreversibility. Things can be reversed. Does it look promising compared to what happened when the Oslo Agreement was signed? Yes, it's less likely than it was then. But the same parameters, the same issues are still there. And you don't, when you look at any solution, you also compare to the alternatives. And you look at the alternative, they are not more likely than the two-state solution, unless we'll take what is the so-called status quo that we see now, which is not good for anyone.
Is it possible that Trump has made the position more likely or far less likely?
Trump is an ongoing damage to anything that's going on right now, and I don't think it made it more likely. He has actually highlighted two things. One, how volatile is the situation? You see what happened right now in the streets. B, that actually the United States and Israel are isolated. It shows not only in this issue, probably on any other issue, it's highlighted that every gathering right now condemned Trump's decision and actually recognized East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. And actually there is a meeting today of the Security Council which reiterates Resolution 478. So I think it made it less likely. If he wants to make it likely, he should present any initiative as he promises for the last 6
Well, there is
7
something I'd
months.
like to get into a little bit later in the programme, but I want to ask you two, then we'll come to you, Hen, in Jerusalem. I want to ask either one of you, or both of you. It's not Trump that's killed the process, is it? It's been dead for years.
Oh, Trump has just flogged the dead horse. The horse died many, many years ago. So no, he's not responsible for it, but he's certainly making things worse.
Yeah, listen, anybody who believes in the two-state solution now demonstrates the principle of the triumph of hope over experience. We know that it's not possible. It's not possible, even if it had been desirable to have a two-state solution, and I've never believed it was desirable, but even if it were desirable, it's not actually feasible, it's not physically possible.
And Hen, in Tel Aviv for us, what is the feeling there that peace, if you want to call it that, or some kind of agreement is less likely now or more likely?
Yeah, so first of all, just to point out, I do support the two-state solution, and I do believe that it's possible.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. But the issue here, I think, at hand is the fact that we're talking about a statement like it actually has some, implications. For us, Israel, as it does, the fact of the matter is that if you go into Tel Aviv now and you go in Israel, you see that people are not jumping up and down. You know that Jerusalem is the capital. Factually, morally, historically, it is our capital. And I think that the Palestinians should take the same approach. Instead of waiting for foreign leaders to tell them where their capital is, they should just like we did. You know, we don't need the West to tell us where is our capital. We know where it is. And it wasn't an issue for Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority to go 2012 to the United Nations and demand full recognition as a member state.
Sharif, I've been reading about this studying the situation for many years. And I don't think Trump could have made it worse. I think perhaps what's happened is it is now in the spotlight again, and therefore people who've been entrenched in their views for years, for whatever reason, may have to think again about where they're going. And that's the Palestinians in particular on this one.
The reason why he's made it worse is not necessarily just because of what he's done. It's also the weakness of Arab and Muslim reaction to it. We have often been told that Jerusalem is a red line to the Arab and Muslim worlds, but all we've seen so far is words of condemnation. Some strong, some weak, but that's it. And I think the danger here is the message this sends to Trump and to Israel is that no matter how isolated the US and Israel are, they can do whatever they want. And if Jerusalem, the red line, can be, if the status can be changed at will without any actual blowback, then Israel can ride roughshod over any aspect of Palestinian rights. And I think that's where the real danger lies.
And we're getting close to where I wanted to take this discussion. But in just a moment, I mean, I'm wondering about the PLO leadership, because we have Fatah and Hamas who've struck a deal, but it's quite likely to fall apart. And the suggestion is that the only reason it's stayed together for this last week and a half is because the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas went out and said what he said about what Trump has done. There is no stability within the movement, and therefore, as Sharif says, the Israelis in the United States and other countries can pretty much do what they want. This isn't going to make any difference to the peace process at all, is it?
Well, first of all, can I just go back to Trump for a moment and let's establish some basic ground rules here. What Trump has done is endorsed an illegal situation. This is really important to bear in mind. It's not just a question of Trump felt like it and, oh dear, and what we're going to do. It's illegal. The presence of Israel in East Jerusalem is illegal. And for a US president or any world leader to endorse an illegal situation is, first of all, it's null and void in international law. And secondly, what kind of a signal does this give to the rest of the world? It's absolutely appalling what he's done. However, having said that, in terms of the Palestinian movement, Well, I wonder, look, he's focused minds, that's for sure. What he's done has made people really examine where they stand, what they want to do, what about the United States being an honest broker, all this sort of thing is good, it's quite welcome. But in terms of how it unifies the Palestinian factions, etc., I should tell you, it's been remarkably unifying to Palestinians as a whole. All of us in the diaspora, people under Israeli occupation, Israeli second-class citizens in Israel, Arab citizens of Israel, are all unified. A very rare moment and a very important moment, unified in their opposition to what's happened, in their eagerness, their desire to do something about it.
Let's bring up the subject to which I've been alluding, and this is President Mahmoud Abbas, apparently summoned to Riyadh, capital of Saudi Arabia, by the Crown Prince there, and told that if they wanted continued Saudi support, and that is massive in terms of the finances that go to pay the civil service salaries, and that basically keeps the Palestinian economy afloat. If they wanted that to continue, they would have to accept the geographical borders as they stand now, not 1967 borders, in other words, with the settlements in it. They would have to have no right of return, which has been a staple of the demands of the Palestinians since the Nakba, the late 1940s. And he then came back and told the world that this was unacceptable. But it's a fundamental shift if you have Saudi Arabia saying we could withdraw the money, because what we want is a stronger alliance with Israel against Hezbollah and Iran. The PLO has to deal with this.
Well, I mean, can I say quickly? Of course, that shows you the disaster of having this young man in Saudi Arabia trying to change the geopolitical reality in the Middle East. So that's the first indication of what a disaster this is. Secondly, of course, what is interesting about it is that Abbas, of course, did not back down. He could not have accepted that. And what it's done...
Otherwise, he was dead politically.
Well, of course.
Totally.
Well,
yes,
of course. But you see, what it's led to is a very interesting realignment of forces in the region. Look at the Conference of Islamic Cooperation. In Istanbul, what you have is Turkey, and you have Mahmoud Abbas, and you have the King of Jordan, as it were, in one grouping. And then you've got the Saudis and the Americans and the Israelis. It's a very interesting change.
I'm trying to get to the realpolitik of this, which is the fact that the Saudis have the money. This man has his own vision, whether you like it or not, and he wants to align himself more with Israel so that between them they can effectively take on and neuter Iran. That's what the PLO now has to deal with.
And the geopolitical conditions in the Middle East change. You have to accept it. You know, now it's not 1993. This has changed. We are living in a completely different world, and we have to deal with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. But I think in this sense, Sharif is absolutely right. At the end of the day, Israel and the United States get away with whatever they do. And if there is no repercussion internationally and no one responds to that, you know, if Israel is rewarded for bad behavior, why should it change? That's the reality now for Israel and Saudi Arabia to see that their major issue is to deal with Iran. This is not going to change in the foreseeable future. And by the way...
But it's also something that Trump wants to see as well, doesn't he? He wants to see the Iran deal unpicked.
Absolutely. But also bear in mind, when it comes to the financial support of the PA, most of it comes from the United States, or a large part of it comes from the United States. So this support is important for Abbas too. And I think, yes, the PLO and the Palestinian leadership needs to look at themselves too. And they need to reform, they need to change. The issue of succession in the PLO is massive one. If there is no new leadership that's ready to challenge the convention as it is, probably they stay in the same place.
We'll talk about possibilities of new leadership in just a moment. I think we're back with you, Hen Mazzig, in Tel Aviv. I hope we can hear you properly now. Is there a sense within Israel that taking on Iran, and at the northern border, of course, that's represented by Hezbollah, is the most important thing, and therefore getting into bed with Saudi Arabia is the right thing to do? Is this being discussed?
I think that what's being discussed is the fact that Israel has been trying to reach out to our neighbors and promote peace. It's something that we've been trying to do for years, and now that we're seeing it I think it's a sign for us to tell us that the Jerusalem resolution doesn't really hold water in the Middle East. It's not a reason for why Israel wouldn't continue to do with our peace initiatives. It might be a problem for the Palestinians, but we are still in warm relations with Egypt, with Jordan, with Saudi Arabia, and it's something that is hard for the Palestinians to see. I understand that, especially the Palestinian Authority, that doesn't want Israel to achieve peace with its neighbors, let alone peace with Palestine as well. But that's the situation. They need to accept it.
Sharif, how do you change the dynamic that the Palestinian leadership may have brotherhood, it may have done extremely well in garnering cooperation at this OIC meeting, but how does it translate that into something concrete?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a difficult answer, because it's at the moment the reconciliation deal hasn't collapsed yet, but it is still in a precarious situation.
Hamas Fatah.
Yes. You have really only verbal backing from Arab and Muslim governments, and beyond. The European Union has condemned, the whole world has condemned the Trump move, but only verbal condemnation. So really, I think at the moment, I think grassroots movements. You need Palestinian national unity, first off, and you need to focus on grassroots movements around the world, because at the moment, governmental support is lip service, really. So I think we need to unify ranks and
does that mean new leadership?
Well, if you want a healthy Palestinian polity, then you always need to nurture new leadership. We need elections. We need we need democracy in Palestine.
But when was Mahmoud Abbas going to retire? I mean, we're talking some years ago
yes.
now, aren't we?
Well, precisely. This is the problem. We have no election set on the horizon. He is a very elderly man. He could die very soon, and there is no tangible succession process for who replaces him. That could have a major effect on the reconciliation deal. So I think it is important to try and organize elections as soon as possible, so that we have a process by which new leaders can emerge, and more importantly, those that are democratically elected by the people.
Look, can I just say, I think this is very early days. It's quite hard to make any informed judgment on what is going to happen, because it's so early. When I said that Trump's declaration had focused minds, I really mean it. It's focused minds in such a way that it will lead to, it's established a dynamic in which inevitably we will see the appearance of new things, as I said just now, new alignments, new changes, particularly in the Palestinian arena. So the idea of Abbas hanging on, or anybody else hanging on, it's at the moment we can see no indication that he's going to leave. That doesn't actually mean a lot, is my point.
So you think there could be a positive outcome to some extent from what has been decided, because it's shifted everything?
Yes, in a way, yes, because one thing that we need to talk about, or needs to be brought up, is the fact that the Palestinians have a power, only unfortunately they don't seem to understand that they do. They have a power, and it is a power of relinquishing, giving up this whole structure, the structure of a PA, the idea of security coordination with Israel, all this stuff. In the end, what the Palestinians could do is to say, we don't want this leadership, we don't want the peace process, we don't want to cooperate with Israel, we demand equal rights. We are being ruled by Israel, but Israel is ruling the whole region, the whole country, unequally. One side, Jewish Israelis, have all the rights. The other side, Palestinians, have no rights.
Yes, and if you look at the Jerusalem situation, I think it's 14,000 Palestinians since 1967 have had their rights to live there revoked.
Absolutely. So the issue now, and the really interesting thing, if it would happen, is for Palestinians is right, we've had enough. We've lived on charity often long enough. We've been blackmailed through this money. We don't want this anymore. You, Israel, are ruling us, but you're ruling us unequally. You are
Well,
an
we'll talk
apartheid
about whether
state.
saying that is actually going to achieve anything. Hen, I saw you nodding as if you wanted to come in and say something. Do so, and then I've got a question for you.
Of course, I want to say something. First of all, we're talking about, I mean, the idea that the Palestinians should not work with Israel and should not cooperate with us is exactly the problem. Instead of working for peace, instead of trying to sit down and negotiate with Israel, I mean, in 2000, Arafat has a chance to have Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and he rejected it in Camp David. And then since 2014, we haven't had any negotiation because there's always a reason why you can't sit down and negotiate with Israel. When it was the settlements, we froze them for a year, and Abbas still wouldn't sit down and negotiate. So instead of trying to divide us more, polarize us, and it's something that is very common in the West to try and push us against each other, instead of that, why won't you encourage working together? Israelis are not going anywhere. Palestinians are not going anywhere. I think we both know that, and majority of Israelis are actually supporting a two-state solution. It's time to ask the Palestinians and Palestinian representatives, like the two distinguished guests in your studio, why won't you support a two-state solution? Why would you be against Israel's existence as a Jewish state, the only Jewish state, and you have to accept the idea that it's going to stay there, just like we accept the idea that
Can I please cut in
are
here?
not going anywhere, and we support their self-determination.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a minute, Hen.
The Palestinian Authority has worked with Israel since the early 1990s, and all we have to show for it is literally the wiping of Palestine off the map. That is what cooperation with Israel has resulted in. Why should we continue to do that? That's absurd. The PA has broken its back, bending over backwards, to cooperate with Israel against the wishes of Palestinians because they see that literally their land, their rights are being wiped off the map by a country that's claiming to be seeking peace. And unfortunately, you are coming across as a spokesman for this kind of fantasy.
Well, I'm not
Israel is not interested in peace. They are colonizing Palestine off the map. We shouldn't coordinate with them.
I'm not sure this was where I wanted this particular programme
Well,
to
he
go.
took it
No, I agree. Both of you perhaps have gone off track a little bit because we've had these arguments for the last 30, 40 years, and I've hosted programmes for the last 15, 20 years.
But you see, there is a point.
Come up. But I'm looking at where does it go from here, Yossi?
You see, if the side, and what we see here, on one side there is a Palestinian society in despair, living under occupation. It's 50 years. It's half a century under occupation. If Israel means peace, it can't expand settlements. It's just to show goodwill. Yeah. It can't exclude 40,000.
Well, the idea put forward by Hen that stopping settlement building for a year was a great thing. I mean, it should stop it altogether if it wants to get back to talking, perhaps.
That's what's changed. When people question the issue of two-state solution, first and foremost, is because there are 500,000 Jewish settlers there. So it's not that Abbas doesn't want a peace based on two-state solution. Whether he's capable of delivering or not, this is a different question. Whether the Palestinian political system is capable to deliver it or not, it's another question. But the fact that there is willingness among the PA and among the PLO, this has been for a while. But it doesn't go. If Hen can show us willingness among the current Israeli government, yes, I see public opinion among the Israelis, there are more than 50% that are interested in a two-state solution peace, but not in the current government, not the way that the Israeli government operates right now. And that's what we need to see.
The problem also is when we cite polls about Israeli support for a two-state solution, we need to look at what they consider the parameters of the two-state solution, and that's important. What they might consider a two-state solution, and this is unfortunately the case, is something that couldn't be acceptable to Palestinians because it is a non-contiguous, non-viable state.
Yeah, and
it has to be tested.
Yeah,
it has to be tested. So what kind of agreement actually they support and what agreement they are not going to support.
But we need new ideas, don't we? Therefore, not only do we need, perhaps as you've suggested, have a new Palestinian element in this, but and we also need, and anybody else can throw in, we also need a new Israeli initiative, some new what they call blue sky thinking.
There's so many people coming up with new ideas and new alternatives. And I mean, where Palestine will be, I think it's clear to anyone that lives here, knows exactly what the borders are going to be like. From Oslo, we agreed on where it's going to be. So what the idea of a two-state solution that Israelis support is the idea that most of us, including the guests in the studio, know what we're talking about. Just to play innocent and naive and to say like we can't accept this deal. How oppressed people that have been oppressed for so long and are in such a terrible situation can keep on saying no to all these deals that, I mean, leaders throughout the world said that they got the best deals that they could ever get, and they still refused it. So I think we're pointing the blaming finger at the wrong party here.
Okay,
And
quick thoughts. We only have about 30 seconds, so quick thoughts. Is this a turning point?
No, unfortunately, this is going to continue to be the status quo.
No, I think it is a turning point, and I did put forward a new idea. I'm sorry you didn't like it. It is a demand for equal rights. If Israel wishes to rule this whole area from the river to the sea, it has to do it without apartheid. That's the new idea.
Well, I think it's something an awful lot of people have argued for a very long time, Khada, but unfortunately it's not a new idea, and it is not something that is going to be accepted by those in Tel Aviv and
But that's not how things happen.
Well,
you don't wait for people to approve, you get on with it.
Let's hope that things
Right,
change.
you can't make demands after you attack a country and try to obliterate it.
Thanks, and thank you very much indeed. Glad we got back to you. Appreciate your time from Tel Aviv at the table also. Thank you very much indeed. Will this make a difference? We'll have to see whether Trump's decision on Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is going to change anything. Let's hope. Bye-bye.